So the goal of this lesson is to talk about the fact that in Athens, even though it was a democracy, it's really just the male citizens who kind of run the show. Yet there are other people who existed, a massive percentage of the population, who contributed and were involved in Athens running, even though they didn't really get any power of influence. So specifically talking about medics and enslaved peoples and women, and they're there, but they get excluded a lot, and making them understand that from trying to make it their perspective. Today, we're going to be focusing on like the different classes specifically in Athens. The 84%, which means that in the city-state of Athens, women, enslaved people, and medics make up a huge majority of the population. There are 4 stations, even though there's only like 3 classes of people. You're actually sitting at the stations right now. And what you're going to do is you're going to gather information about these peoples and their role in Athenian society. The middle column right here asks you to look at what work or labor did they do, how did they participate or contribute to Athens. So this is kind of like, what is their involvement in the Athenian city-state? The second column, the far right one, is how were they excluded from Athens? How did the polis of Athens limit them? You're going to go to the station, you're going to read the documents that are there, you're going to read the text that's there, gather information, note form in these boxes what you're learning about these people. And then after the 3 minutes, you will rotate stations to the next location, bringing your paper and your writing up that.
Can't participate in government.
And also couldn't talk.
Yeah, also can't talk in court.
I mean, they were free.
What were some good things they did? Like, what were...
They took care of the children, but look around, there's studentalism in there. They received education at home, so would that be a good thing?
The enslaved usually worked for male citizens in like workshop for businessmen.
Worked in workshops for, what'd you say, business men?
They were not allowed to participate until like nothing in the...
Okay, so they can't participate, which means they can't vote, they can't own land, and they have to pay that special tax.
They were an important part of the society and economy.
I think as far as content-wise, I was hearing pretty much what I was expecting from them. This isn't the first time the students have run into information about these different classes, and so their conversations, content-wise, were pretty much on target. They ran into some new details, especially the specifics of the percentage of the population that they hadn't seen before, which I think to some of them was relatively eye-opening, saying that they make up so much of the population and still don't get any power in the government.
Like, they're not allowed to vote.
That's an exclusionary thing. Okay, cool. Forced to do a variety of labor. All right. What did you find in your reading?
I found that they were like considered property. I'm like usual, like forced to do all kinds of labor.
Okay.
Like 10 years older.
Yeah, maybe more.
That's a lot. That's a lot. 14-year-old getting there, it's like 20 year.
Probably higher.
We're 30.
That could happen. As you find stuff, like you want to share out what you found. So like, I don't know if you two want to attack the backside because Clark's already rifling through the front, and then find what you share with each other so you can get as much as you can in the 3 minutes. So let's not classify it as good or bad. They're not saying, that's actually not the question. How are they involved? I guess that's a fair statement that being an enslaved human isn't good. Right. So, but that's not really what they're asking. So we have to make sure we're answering the questions being asked.
So they can't participate in the government.
They worked in crafts like shoes, shield, pottery.
Many enslaved people were captured or kidnapped. Yeah, well, like, I wouldn't want to be sold. Honestly,
I mean, that's how slavery in the United States works. You could be sold off at any time.
This is basically just saying the same thing that the other party said.
So if you drew hearts, you're handling the information from the enslaved peoples. If you drew spades, y'all are doing the medics. And if you drew diamonds, you are handling the information from the women. You're going to share with us information about your class of people, but the way you're going to do it is in this like format of this TikTok of course showing thing. You need to come up with 5 of course statements. And then the bottom one is a little bit different format. You should read what's there. And then you're going to assign it, and you're all in your group going to have to share out one of your statements. I would say over 90% of the way that this lesson ran today was straight out of the investigating history lesson flow, as you'd call it. For the most part, I used their exact wording in the different stations, putting in some definitions of words that may be difficult. But in order to make the kids kind of get a different perspective and really own the personalities of the people that they're talking about, we decided to add at the end, in the putting it together part, sort of something that makes it more personal and kind of in their lives now. Hence why we use the TikTok, like, of course, routine. For this particular activity, instead of making it kind of the same old routine where they're gonna just report out information, I wanted to make it more personalized so they could see that these are real people, and them having to deliver it through this TikTok, like, of course a medic would. I felt at another level where they could see that it's something real that connects to them, and maybe possibly get to be like, oh, women in Athens, like, you did run the show. Really buy into that, like, historical empathy and kind of seeing that these are real people and it's not just facts and information. So you're gonna say, like, if women were included, and then you're gonna, like, how it would be different if they were involved.
Rights, and that they could
And be a more equal
citizen.
society.
Yeah.
There would be more equality, and they would have a larger role in society.
Having a larger role than just like getting babies.
25 seconds. If you prefer, you can stand up. You read yours, unless you have it memorized, and then pass it to the next person who's gonna do theirs next. And that's basically how we're gonna do it. It's not gonna be as fancy as the TikTok videos, but it's fancy enough because, I mean, let's be honest, this is way more informative and educational than those are. So, who wants to go first? Wow.
Of course, enslaved people in Athens were considered property.
Of course, enslaved people in ancient Athens were treated poorly.
Of course, medics had to pay extra tax.
Of course, medics in ancient Athens were an important part of the Athenian economy.
Of course, medics couldn't own land.
Of course, medics were not citizens.
If medics were included in Athenian democracy, there would be more diversity in the citizens' assembly, making the welfare increase, making everyone happy.
Of course, women in ancient Athens participated in religious rituals and festivals. Of course, women in ancient Athens couldn't go to school or got educated at home.
If women were included in Athenian democracy, there would be more equality, and women could be a larger part of society.
The big thing for me as a social studies teacher, especially in 7th grade, where kids are developing their identity and their personality, and they love to question authority, I like to give them a structure and tools to really be critical analyzers of details and information. But trying to get the kids to own that these are like real humans who made society, I think is good because it gives them power to see that they could actually influence change in their world. There's always things that can be improved, and so I'm trying to teach the kids to like continually like be critical analyzers and question those details.